Hi, good people. In our 40 days novena for family deliverance, one of the things that we are encouraging ourselves and everyone is that it is possible to come up with a stronger generation than the generations before us. I am a personal believer that generations can be better. But this does not just happen. The other day, I answered a question that came in my very many instances of reflections and interactions. And actually, there is a gentleman who asked me this question. He's already a married man and a father of 3 sons. So he asked me, Father, I was not raised well by my parents. Actually, my dad was amazing in action dad. My mom was in her own world. So I never enjoyed good parenting. I would say I never had paternal mentorship and I never had maternal mentorship. So in that case, is it possible for me to raise a good family given that I was never raised well by my mom, I was never raised well by my dad? And I told him, absolutely, yes. It is yes because 2 things here we have to understand. Failure is not transferable. We do not transfer failure from one generation to the other. Failure is not inheritable. In fact, sometimes back I had given you, I think, 12 things that cannot be inherited. And one of them is failure. Yes, and I allow me to say this to all of us, and especially men and women in marriages and raising children, and especially those who are never raised well. The fact that your parent failed does not mean that you will fail. Being raised by failed parents does not make you a failure. In fact, you learn a lesson and then you say, I will not be like my dad. He never did this, he never did this, he never did this. For my children who are the generation after me, I will be there for them. I will not be a missing in action dad. And the same must happen to the wife. So this is where you come together and you decide. And you can imagine a situation where, or a scenario where, the husband comes from a broken family, given that he was never raised well. The wife comes from a broken family. She was never raised well. And here they are bringing up, or they are raising a generation that must be better than them. Of course, there is a lot of hard work because there was no proper mentorship. But that does not mean that they are going to replicate whatever it is that was done by their parents. Their parents' generation was weaker. Their generation would say that it's weak, but not as that of the parents. The kids they are raising must be stronger. That's how we come up with a stronger generation. If, as a man or a woman, you are struggling worse than your parents struggled, to the extent that you are falling in the same abysses that they fell, then it means your generation is weaker than that of your dad, and that only means, unless something happens, yours is a dying generation. It cannot be right that the men and the women before you were stronger than you are. Today you are 40 or 45 or something like that. You are well academically exposed. that means you can make it. Your dad never had the academic exposure that you have. Your mom didn't have the academic exposure that you have. And you know, our education widens our horizons. We are able to dig deeper into history such that we can avoid the mistakes that our parents made. That is why I do not believe that it is because your dad was a drunkard, that is why you are a drunkard. Yes, alcoholism is genetic. It could pass through the genes. That is true, 100%. Through the blood, that is true. But it does not happen. It does not happen. You don't wake up and find yourself drunk. You make a decision, free decision, to go and drink. I am a believer that a child raised by a drunkard dad and a drunkard mom, that child can raise a family that is alcohol free. We must stop blaming the generations before us. We can't continue raising children, telling them, you see the way I am, you see my dad did this, my mom did this. It is your turn now to be a dad. Do not allow your children one day also to blame you as you're blaming your dad, who is their grandfather, and maybe their grandfather also blamed someone. We cannot raise generations of blamers. No, we get to a point we hold it. It is possible to be strong in your generation than your parents before you. So yes, you can. Yes, it is possible to raise children better than you, and you must make sure that you are better than your parents in all aspects. That is why, in fact, we do the generational self-disclosure. That way we are able to understand generationally in terms of genetics, genogram, and family history, such that once with that knowledge, armed with that history, then we can say we can avoid here, we can avoid here, and we can avoid here. I've always given this analogy. You are doing a journey in the forest, and you do not know how the forest is, but there are forest rangers. The forest ranger tells you, in this forest, there are these animals, and these animals, and these animals, and these animals. Should this appear, you do this. Should this appear, you do this. Should this appear, you do this. And then you proceed with your journey, armed with information. In the event any of the animals shows up, you have been prepared. If you enter in a forest that has animals and there are no forest rangers to prepare you, then should anything happen inside there, chances of you being devoured or eaten up is very high. Very, very high. Generational self-disclosure arms us with information, historical information, generational information, information towards our genogram, the behaviors, the diseases in our families, so that we can also be able to understand why we need to do this and avoid this and the other one. Good people, I'm a believer that we can be better than the parents before us. Let's rise up. Let's clean whatever it is that was never cleaned by our parents. Talking about deliverance is not enough. We must do something. Thank you. May the Almighty God bless you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.